All right, welcome in to Not the Will Ford Show. This is something new. Same show, different name. We're rebranding a little bit. It's been a year. Crazy to say that, but this is Where There's a Will. Now, if you've been seeing me, on social media with Storied Rival Sports Media, I've been doing some podcasting with them, Stadium Drive during football season, interviewing coaches in the Southeast Ohio area, Central Ohio area, so Columbus area, Zanesville area, like high school football in those areas, hyping up some games, hyping up some athletes, and getting to talk to some great coaches that we have in the Muskingum Valley League, the Licking County League, and also in the OCC in Columbus. So, and we also branched into the IVC as well with Garaway, covered Garaway and Indian Valley during a week of the regular season. So much fun doing that. And now we're hopping into basketball, and we've got a new show out called Jump Street, where we're just talking hoops with some high school basketball coaches, boys and girls, just to kind of keep you in touch with what's going on with basketball in this area this year. But it's been a long time since I've sat and done something on my own. It's been over a year since the last episode of the Will Ford Show, and doing the podcasting with Storied Rivals kind of reignited my passion for, talking sports. And so this is what I love doing, and I'm happy to be back doing it again. And we're not the Will Ford Show anymore. It is Where There's a Will, because you know what they say, where there's a will, there's a Ford. No, I'm kidding. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I remember Melvin Pursuit, freshman basketball coach at Meadowbrook, he told me that once. He said, "You know what they say, Will, where there's a will." And I was like, "There's a way?" And he's like, "There's a Ford." And I'm like, "Fair." So just a little inside joke there, I guess, between me and you. But welcome to, I guess, the inaugural show of Where There's a Will as we kick things off. I want to do in this show, thanks so much for being here, by the way. We're on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the usual places, keeping that account running. All the previous episodes from over the last couple of years, still there. Obviously, none of it is really relevant now, but if you want to check out any of the old content, it is all still there on SoundCloud, Apple, and Spotify. But make sure you follow on all those places. We'll also put stuff on Facebook as well. I say will, like I like there's multiple people. I'll put stuff on Facebook as well, and on X, Twitter. So yeah, and YouTube. We're gonna try to post on all the platforms. And yeah, let's do a Thursday night football / I guess Friday morning reaction to the game last night that was in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. Just a bloodbath. It was like 63-21, the final score. The Raiders won. 2 5-8 teams, tons of injuries on both sides. Justin Herbert's out for the year for the Chargers. And they're missing their two best receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So their offense, bunch of backups. And for the Raiders, they have Aiden O'Connell in there starting. And honestly, looks like he's a decent player. And could be the quarterback for the Raiders moving forward. Who knows? That's a discussion for another day. But they were without Josh Jacobs, one of the better running backs in the league. And I mean, they bludgeoned Los Angeles. It was really it was probably the least competitive game of the year outside of that early season win in like week 3 for the Miami Dolphins over the Denver Broncos, where it was 70-20. Outside of that game, this game might have been worse, to be honest. And we already knew the Chargers were going down the drain. I think a lot of us suspected that Brandon Staley was going to be fired at the end of this regular season. He should have been fired after blowing that 4-score lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs last year. Should have been fired, right after that. They didn't fire him. They brought him back for one more year. Clearly, hasn't worked out. And the NFL it's shifting more and more, and maybe the shift is complete, but it's an offensive league. Offensive coaches dominate in this league. Now, obviously, you have some exceptions to that. Like we know Bill Belichick has been so good for so long, but even that is a situation where it's going down the chute. And it seems like, the Patriots and Bill Belichick are going to part ways at the end of the year, which we'll talk about that in another show. But that was pretty embarrassing last night for the Chargers. Granted they have some backups on offense, but I mean, so do the Raiders. I mean, neither team is really playing for anything. Neither team is particularly good, although the Chargers do have some good players. That was embarrassing for Brandon Staley. That was embarrassing for the Chargers, and Brandon Staley and the general manager Tom Telesco were fired this morning, and rightfully so. They should have been. I would probably the GM. I don't know if I don't know if I would have fired the GM because the Chargers actually do have some good players at key positions. They obviously have the quarterback right with Justin Herbert. He's just been banged up and he's out with a finger injury. Austin Eckler is a nice running back, but they do have to make a decision on him at the end of the season, whether you're going to pay him or not. Keenan Allen is a great wide receiver, but an aging wide receiver. Mike Williams is a good number 2 when he's healthy. And they put plenty of money into the defense, and they're good players. But Brandon Staley is just not a good coach. Now, he also does not have a lot of pro experience. He has like 4 years of pro experience. I mean, 2 years as like 1 year as some lower level assistant, 1 year as a defensive coordinator under Sean McVay with the Rams, and then 2 years with the Chargers. Absolute disaster. He's a defensive coach and he can't get his side of the ball right. The defense is trash, legit garbage for the Chargers. It's horrible. And they've got good players. They've got good edge rushers, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, although Khalil Mack is aging, but good players at edge rusher. Derwin James it's a less important of a position, safety, but he's a good player at safety. They have a great corner that I like in Asante Samuel Jr. Now they whiffed on, bringing in JC Jackson in the offseason. You whiff on that sometimes. I feel like free agent signings, they don't always work out. They're more likely to work out than a draft pick, but nonetheless, didn't work out. They moved off of him and they got a pick back. That's fine, but they have defensive pieces, but schematically, they're just terrible. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse over Brandon Staley's tenure. If you can't get your side of the ball right, if you can't be good defensively, and the offense has struggled like it has this year, you're not going to be a good football team, and that's clearly the case with the Chargers. So Brandon Staley, he's going to return to the couch as he should. I don't think he should get another job. And middle of the season when media were questioning about is he still going to call the defense when it was playing so bad, like all this decision making and going for it on 4th down with Justin Herbert and everything. Like he's just not a good coach, and he didn't handle things the right way at the podium all the time either. And so he deserves to be out the door. I would have probably kept Telesco because he's good. He's done a good job, spending money on the defense, on good players. I just think it's truly a coaching matter. But it looks like Dean Spanos and the ownership group there in Los Angeles, that family, they want to just reboot, restart, and that's totally fair. But historically, they tend to go cheap with coaches. They hired Brandon Staley when they could have went after Brian Dable, who was the offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills at the time, now the coach with the New York Giants. They could have went after him, but they would have had to have paid a premium. Sean Payton, before he took the Denver Broncos job, was very interested in coaching the Chargers. Turned it down. The problem is with guys like that, you got to pay him $15, $20 million a year, and Dean Spanos doesn't want to do that. He went cheap with this coaching hire, didn't work out. I think in this situation, now with you starting anew, bringing a new GM, whoever that is, and then you can't go cheap with coach. You cannot. And usually 6 or 7 coaching positions open up on average every season in the NFL. And I think the Chargers job might be the best one because you've got the quarterback. You've got a good left tackle in Rashawn Slater. You've got some good weapons when they're healthy. And the defense has nice players. I just think schematically they were being used in the wrong way and they just didn't have a good scheme. And so I think with the coaching candidates that are out there, uh, obviously Jim Harbaugh, is at the top of the list, the coach at Michigan. The problem though is he's a guy that wants control, and I think coaches should have a certain level of control when it comes to their roster in the NFL. They should have some input in the drafting process because they're going to be working with these players every single day. And so Jim likes a lot of control, but the thing is owners in the NFL don't like to relinquish that control. So he's also expensive. I don't know if they're going to go hire Jim Harbaugh, but I think he is at the top of the list. If you can get him from Michigan, I do think there's a great possibility that he would be very interested in leaving the NFL after everything that went on with the sign stealing and that scandal with the NCAA, the Big Ten, Michigan, on all that stuff. I think there's a good chance he would want to leave and jump back to the NFL. And I think he's the best candidate. The other two candidates, if you're not going to go after Jim Harbaugh, I think the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions appears to be the next great offensive assistant that can land a coaching job and be fairly successful. Because I think Shane Steichen was last year's offensive guru. Heck of a job with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Jalen Hurts led him to a Super Bowl. And he, with the Colts now this year, they're 7-5 or 7-6 or something, and they have a chance to make the playoffs in the AFC with Gardner Minshew. So they don't even have their rookie quarterback that they drafted. They're rocking with Gardner Minshew, and they're almost they could make the playoffs. Shane Steichen has been excellent, and so a lot of people think that Ben Johnson is that next guy out of Detroit and what he's done with that Detroit Lions offense. And I think with the league trending towards offense, that's what you have to do. You have to go get an offensive guy, get Justin Herbert back on the right track because he regressed this year under Brandon Staley. He's been banged up as well. And some offensive pieces have been banged up, but you need to get that offense back on the right track and spend maybe a little bit more money on the offense as well. The other thing that makes this job extremely attractive is that because the Chargers, they have good players, quarterback, left tackle, good receivers, good pieces on defense. You might have to move a couple of those pieces in the offseason. That's fine. But because they've been so bad, they currently have the number 5 pick in the draft. And playing Easton Stick at quarterback the rest of the season, they might end up with the 4th or 3rd pick. And so let's just say the first 2 picks of the draft, it goes Caleb Williams, Drake May, 2 quarterbacks. If the Chargers are at number 3, they already have some decent players on the offensive line, a great left tackle in Rashawn Slater. If Marvin Harrison is there at 3, adding him to Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, and you have Marvin Harrison with Justin Herbert, oh my goodness, that would be extremely attractive, an attractive scenario for a potential hire for a Jim Harbaugh, a Ben Johnson. And I guess the third candidate, if I had to give you a third candidate, it's probably Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Again, he's a defensive coach, so it kind of contradicts what I just said, but he's been to a Super Bowl. Granted, he had Kyle Shanahan as his offensive coordinator, who's probably the best play caller in all of football, him and Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. Granted, that's who he had on his staff, but I think he, being a coordinator now the last couple of years, just taking some of that pressure off of his plate, not having to be up in front of the rest of the room, I think he'd be ready to step back into a head coaching role, and I think he's smart enough to know I need top-level assistants. I need a great offensive coordinator to lead Justin Herbert in this offense. And obviously, he's going to handle things on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, look what he's done with the Cowboys the last couple of years. He's been fantastic. So he's probably the third candidate. But this Chargers job is so interesting because they already have some good players. And they have the number 5 pick, but it could be a top 3 pick in the draft. And let's say you don't end up, Marvin Harrison doesn't fall to you at 3 or 4 or 5. It's a very rich quarterback and offensive line draft, which neither of those they obviously don't need a quarterback. They can probably pass on offensive line in the first round. You can trade back, get more first-round picks, more second-round picks, acquire assets for the following year. It's very attractive. It's very, very attractive for top-level coaches. And I do think the best three candidates are Jim Harbaugh from Michigan, Ben Johnson, the OC with the Detroit Lions, and then probably Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. I think those should be the three top hires. All three would be expensive, though. I think, for the Chargers, are they willing to do it? I think they have to be. Kellen Moore is probably going to be their interim coach the rest of the year. We'll see how they do. Clearly, they're playing with backups, so they're not going to be very good. But I would not go cheap with a hire. I would not hire Kellen Moore as your head coach. I just think it's been a bad situation. And I think if you're going to fire the coach and the general manager, you might as well just start completely new, hire a head coach that can hire his own staff and bring in whoever he wants. If that means he retains Kellen Moore, fine. But I don't think Kellen Moore should be elevated to the head coaching job just to save a couple of dollars. Because, you see owners do it all the time. They hire coaches and then quickly they'll move off of them if it's not working. And they're happy to just pay them the rest of their salary over the next couple of years. It's kind of sad in a way. Like, I don't feel bad for these coaches that get fired because they get all their money anyway. It's just a rounding error for these owners. So it was certainly extremely embarrassing for the Chargers franchise last night, for Chargers fans. Chargers fans have been through so much over the years. One of the more underwhelming teams of the last decade and a half. With Phillip Rivers, they had some great teams with Phillip Rivers, went to an AFC championship one year, could just never get out of their own way. And they seem to be doing that again right now, but they have Staley out the door, thank God. They could have kept their GM. That's fine, though. You want to start fresh. And I think if they get a Jim Harbaugh, a Ben Johnson, I truly think that the Chargers will be better for it. And they'll no longer be that team that keeps getting in their own way. But make sure you subscribe to Where There's a Will on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to put this up on Facebook and YouTube as well. And we'll put the link out on X. But thanks so much for joining me here this evening. Little Thursday Night Football Friday morning reaction. Obviously, this is coming out to you this evening, but a reaction to what's occurred over the last 24 hours. And in the next show, we're going to talk about what two legendary franchises do with their coaches, because the Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are clearly not in great spots right now. Pittsburgh's still alive for the playoffs, but I do think that it might be time to move on from their legendary coaches and Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin. We'll talk about that in the next show. But thanks for being here. This is Where There's a Will.